How's it going?
Hey, pretty good. Got this really cool book I think you'll find fascinating.
Underground Railroad Sketches by E.M. Petite.
So a bunch of little short stories by the slaves that actually used the Underground Railroad.
That's pretty cool. You know, I have an employee who would actually think this was about subways.
There you go. The book is a collection of short stories about the slaves who actually used the Underground Railroad to escape to freedom. To find a book this old on the Underground Railroad is quite unusual. There are very few titles like this from the 19th century. I'd like to get at least $500 for the book.
This is pretty cool. I mean, the Underground Railroad was a really, really dangerous thing. Most people today don't realize the world back then. If you had a team of guys hunting down a runaway slave and they came across a person transporting that slave, they weren't just going to take the slave back and that was the end of it. The way they looked at it is that you just stole their property, and some very bad things would generally happen to you.
Right.
Being a conductor in the Underground Railroad was a very dangerous, risky thing. But these people really, really believed in these things. The Underground Railroad was an incredibly successful operation before the Civil War. Tens of thousands of people made it to safety with all kinds of obstacles in their way. And the fact that someone was able to document this is absolutely great. Do you know if this is a first edition, or was there more than one edition?
From our research, this is the first edition. It's actually signed here by the gentleman who wrote the introduction.
And that is Mr. W. McKinstry? Okay, and he signed it on October 7th, 1895.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you want to sell it?
Yes, I'd like to sell it.
Okay, and how much would you like for it?
I've been seeing prices in the range of $900 to $1,000. I'd like $700.
It sounds reasonable. I just don't know what it's worth. I don't know if there was a lot of these books out at the time. Do you mind if I have someone take a look at it? Because I don't know.
Not a problem.
Just hang out for a little bit, and I'll be right back, okay?
Okay, sounds good. I feel this book is good enough that a second opinion would be fantastic. I think the opinion will agree pretty much with what I'm saying.
What do we got?
The book.
The book.
The book.
Let's take a look. Although I like this, I see McKinstry signed it. McKinstry was the editor of the newspaper that originally requested this memoir be written.
Oh, okay.
In fact, Pettit here, Eber Pettit, he was a major part of the Underground Railroad in Fredonia, New York, and he didn't decide to kind of sit back and write about it. Instead, it was McKinstry who pushed him and said, we need to have a record of what it was like for these slaves who were escaping the South.
Did he interview the slaves?
Well, yes, Pettit would talk with the slaves at the time, and then he would report stories. And in that way, it's very much a documentary record of what the people were going through. If I remember correctly, the first story here tells about a slave who had escaped, and he comes across a barn, and he has no idea whether the person owning that is going to help him or turn him in. And he is so frightened by the prospect that he'll be turned in. And he doesn't blame the people either, because they were going to get a $500 reward for doing that. $500 at the time is huge. And so there are tons of little stories in here that show this just beautiful, bright side of humanity despite these terrible situations. There's a huge range and estimate of how many slaves were able to escape through the Underground Railroad. You see numbers about, on the low end, about 30,000. On the high end, you see numbers as high as 100,000. It is a service to humanity that it has been documented.
Is the book in good shape? I mean, is this a first edition?
This was a pretty small printing. It was printed in Fredonia, so there aren't that many copies. It's a very unusual book to see, which is kind of exciting. As far as these types of books go, it's not in horrible condition.
Okay. The big question, what's it worth?
This book is really important from the perspective of documenting all of this lore that otherwise was only passed down as oral history, okay? There are a lot of people who would be very interested in this book. I think it would be completely fair to price it around $12.50.
Okay.
Sweet.
Good news for everyone, I hope?
Good news for everyone, I think.
All right.
You're the best.
Happy to help.
Thank you very much.
Bye. This book on the Underground Railroad is a wonderful document for this period. This is the type of book that a lot of different collectors would want, but frankly, I could see it ending up in an institution very easily, too.
Can I give you $500? I mean, books aren't like gold coins. They sit around for a while. They really do. It's,
I don't mind leaving something on the bone, but that sounds like quite a bit. You know, what she said, I'm thinking more like 1,000.
well, you came in here, you only wanted 700.
I thought it was a $1,000 book when I came in.
How about 650?
I'm thinking 800.
I'm a person who rarely gives what people are asking on the first try, but I will give you your original asking price of 700 then.
You know, 700 bucks sounds good. I only paid $2 for it.
All right, good for you. Let's go up front. I'll write you up.
Usually I'm lucky if I make $5 or $10 on a book that I find in an estate sale. This was definitely the exception to the rule. When I pulled this book off the shelf, I said, yeah, this is a winner. My gut told me this was a good book.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good.
What do we got?
I got a 1967 autographed Chicago Bears football.
The Bears!
That's right.
Hi!
I came to the pawn shop today to try to sell my football. Money would be just a nice little bonus from holding on to for 45 years. I'm putting it at $10,000 mark.
So how'd you get it?
My uncle gave me the ball. It was given to him by Ronnie Bull, a Chicago player, at a banquet. You can see him handing it there.
60s pro football wasn't at the level of college football yet. I mean, if you would read some of the programs they had from the games, there'd be giant ads talking about, could local businessmen in the area please give the players jobs during the off-season so they don't have to leave town to find work.
Right.
It isn't like today where this guy would be at a minimum making $4 million a season.
Right.
There's a story about a guy on the Packers who would actually come and do the maintenance on the field during the off-season. This is cool because it comes from a time when pro football was just starting to explode in popularity. And back then, those guys didn't have all the protective gear they have now, so those guys were grinding it out all season long. So this one should have Dick Butkus or...
Yes, he's on there. The big name to me is George Halas because this is the last year that George Halas was a head coach. And he started in 1920, and this is 1967.
I mean, he was pretty much one of the guys that helped start the NFL into what it is,
Sure
right?
was. Sure was.
And it's got Gale Sayers and Brian Piccolo on it, right?
Both of them.
Those are pretty desirable. Brian Song, the movie, everybody knows it.
Right.
I mean, it's a huge movie. Brian Piccolo gets cancer, and it's about him and Gale Sayers' relationship. Brian Piccolo's signature is pretty rare. He died at the age of 26 and became a legend because of his story. Pair that with his friend Gale Sayers' signature and a bunch of other Hall of Famers, this thing could be worth a lot of money. So what'd you want to do with it, man?
Sell it.
Any particular amount you're looking for?
Just from what I've seen on the internet and what I put on it was $10,000.
You know, here are some of the concerns I have with it. We have a picture there, obviously, but we have absolutely no authentication for the ball. Do you mind if I give a buddy of mine a call? He can kind of appraise it.
Sure, that's fine with me.
All right, man, I'll give him a call.
All right, thank you. There's no way that these can be fake because my uncle received the ball from Ronnie Bull, a player on the Chicago Bears at the time. So, yeah, I feel good. I feel very good about it.
No other team in the NFL has more wins than the Chicago Bears. The 1967 season was absolutely huge, but it wasn't because of their record. They barely had a winning season, but that was the last year of an era for them. Coach George Halas, after 40 years, that was his last year coaching. The 1967 squad also had some marquee players in Dick Butkus, Gale Sayers, and what became Brian Piccolo as well. The Chicago Bears are one of the two oldest teams who are still playing in the NFL, and as far as fan bases go, they have one of the most loyal fan bases of any team out there. What concerns do you have?
There's a lot of signatures on this ball. Plus, I don't know what to price it as because they're relatively famous players.
Absolutely.
And as we all know, Brian Piccolo isn't around anymore.
All right, so right here, first off the bat, we have Gale Sayers. He went to the Pro Bowl 5 consecutive years, had 2 rushing titles, and is the youngest guy ever to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. From there, we go on to Dick Butkus, who's in the Hall of Fame as well. Right in the middle, George Halas. Legendary coach, probably one of the most influential and important people in football history. Now, to the left of his name, right here we have Brian Piccolo, who at this time he was just a backup to Gale Sayers. But Over time, he would become immortal, thanks largely to Brian's song, The Movie, which makes him, of everybody on this whole ball, the most important signature on here. Brian Piccolo came to the Chicago Bears as a backup to Gale Sayers. Fortunately, he had a run-in with cancer and passed away at the age of 26. Brian's song came out in the early 70s, and he became an instant phenomenon amongst fans. Now, if we were dealing with an official ball, mint condition signatures, we'd be talking several $1,000s. Now, looking at some of the signatures, we have to determine whether or not these are even authentic ones. With George Halas, the two key characteristics are the G in George and the H in Halas. These signatures are very difficult to fake. And it's the same thing on Dick Butkus. I mean, his D almost looks like an N. A lot of people say, hey, who's this guy, Nick Butkus? But it's got a very distinct signature. So those signatures, they're 100% spot on, exactly what I want to see in a 1967 ball. Now, the other signatures, you really got to focus on the characteristics of the autograph compared against other ones that have been proven to be authentic. And if we compare a Brian Piccolo signature here to the one on the football, primarily in the B, how it forms, and how at the end here, the L and the O dips off, these are contrasting signatures and very typical for what you see in a clubhouse signature. They were signed by somebody else other than the athlete.
What about the Gale Sayers?
Gale Sayers, the signatures I'm familiar with, it's a very robust, full letter G. This one just isn't characteristic of other Gale Sayers I've seen from the late part of the 1960s. So the Sayers, like the Piccolo, in my opinion, these are clubhouse autographs. This is very common, and all it really is, somebody knows the signature and does their best interpretation of it to try to make it look as authentic as possible.
I never heard of that before, and here I had the ball for 45 years. I thought all those signatures are legit on that ball.
It still has authentic autographs. George Halas and Dick Butkus, that's two solid Hall of Famers, and are always going to have value. Considering the kind of ball it's on, which ones are real versus which ones are clubhouse, you're looking at it maybe tops $1,000.
That's a big difference.
Right. Jeremy, man, I appreciate you coming in.
Anytime, Corey.
All right, see you later.
Sadly, in sports memorabilia, it's a part of my job to have to break people's hearts sometimes. I will stand behind my opinion in that these are clubhouse signatures.
All right, man, so you heard my guy. He says it's worth probably around 1,000. I mean, I got a feeling this is gonna sit around for years. I'd offer you around $100 for it.
So I'll just keep holding on to it.
Right on, man, appreciate it.
I feel pretty let down. I think clubhouse signatures are very deceitful. I'd like to meet the people that do that and give them a piece of my mind.
Hey, how can I help you?
I have these cigar box labels, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Yeah, these are old cigar labels.
Saw a couple presidents on there, a couple old guys.
This is something you would definitely not see nowadays, politicians putting their names on tobacco products. Back then, they had to find something to get their name out there.
They didn't have no tweeter.
You mean Twitter?
Okay.
I decided to come in the pawn shop today to sell my collection of cigar box labels. I have no idea what they're worth or anything, but I just want to make some money off them, to be honest with you. That's really the only reason I bought them.
These are pretty neat. Do you know much about them?
Absolutely nothing. My mom had me garage selling with her. The whole book was $3, so I figured what the hell, I'd pick it up.
You know, smoking's bad for you, but back then, it's what people did. You would go into a store and they were kept behind the counter, but they always had like a box sitting on the counter. And generally that box was the one with the coolest artwork on it.
Okay.
And there was a lot of competition. They were constantly changing the name of their cigars just so they could put new artwork on there and make it a little different. Back in the early 1900s, cigar smoking was incredibly popular, and cigar manufacturers did whatever they could to get new customers. Labels like these were a great way to get your brand to stick out. They're all in remarkably good shape. Most of these are like 1910-ish, except for this one right here. You gotta realize it was only made for a few months in the summer and fall of 1900. McKinley and Roosevelt were running for president and vice president. This was made with stone lithography, and they started adding gold leafing. The process to do it was expensive.
Yeah.
The artwork on these things is something that's really, really collectible.
It's awesome.
So how much are we looking to get at them?
How about 300?
So you can just make 100 times what you paid for them?
Hey, I gotta start somewhere.
They don't go for a lot of money, and they sit around for a long time. I'll give you $50.
I need a little bit more, man. I'll knock off 100, $200.
I'll tell you what, I don't have time to dance around all day. I'll give you $100. That's my final offer. Take it or leave it.
I'll do it.
Okay, all right, I'll meet you right up front up here.
Okay, cool. I paid $3, so I think I'm a winner. I'm gonna go out tonight.
Corey, these have come in.
Hi there.
Okay. Why don't you start by telling me where you got this stuff?
I'm a taxidermist, and I have a few items that were never picked up.
How do you get into taxidermy?
I've always loved animals, and
You just wanted to work with dead ones?
I came to the pawn shop tonight to sell some taxidermy items. I'm here at night because during the daytime, I take care of my 91-year-old mother. I need to sell these because I need the room in my house and my shop.
How do you do this kind of stuff?
You just cut them and take their skin off, just like you would take your clothes off, only with a knife.
Okay. Taxidermy's been big since the mid-1800s. It's just the ultimate thing for a guy to show off the big game he's killed. It's kind of creepy to me, but a lot of people are really into it.
What is everything that you have?
This is a Rio Grande turkey.
What's on the inside of them?
On a bird, it's just the body. Then there's wires that go through their wings, through their legs, and up into the head. This is a freeze-dry head.
Okay.
And this is an African plains animal. It's called a red hartebeest. They are one of the fastest animals on the plains, and he's got Dr. Seuss-looking horns on him.
I see you got a third one up there. You want to set it up here for me?
This little guy?
Olivia, will you hand me that?
It's okay, it's not gonna hurt you.
Is that a deer's butt?
It is. Actually, if you look at it this way, this is usually the part hunters see, you know, as they're running off. I used a bobcat jaw set, then I hand sculpted a nose onto it to look like a dog's nose, and those are some eyes that I collect from different taxidermy conventions I go to.
This is why I hate doing the night shift. You get the most random, strange stuff coming in. This stuff's definitely unique, but who knows how long it's gonna take to find a buyer. But if it does sit around for a while, I can always use it to scare chum. So what do you want to do with this stuff?
I want to sell it.
Any idea of what you want for it, or?
I would like to get at least $400 for the turkey.
What about the moose thing?
It's not a moose thing. I'd like 6 1/4 if I can
Six
get
and a
that.
quarter, and this thing right here?
$250.
You're asking me for $1,275. I'm really only interested in the butt head. I ran into a problem before having this stuff where people wouldn't even come in my store because of the taxidermy stuff. I'll give you $100 for it.
No, how about $230? There's a lot of work that goes into that.
I believe it. I just don't know if I'm willing to pay it. $150 and you got a deal. That's the most I'm gonna pay.
Oh. Okay,
Deal?
all right.
Olivia here will write you up.
All right, thank you. I feel pretty good about $150 for the butt head. I've gotten out of it what I put into it and a couple dollars more, so I'm fine with that.